Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
And good evening, everybody. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at CriticalBlast.com, and I am happy to report that the prognosticating over the fate of our guest is over. He is safe and happy and sound, as is most often the case when we talk over the internet and there are multiple time zones involved.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
So, time zones are now resolved. It is 7:40 Central Time, 6:40 Mountain Time, 8:40 Eastern Time. It's 5 o'clock somewhere in Jimmy Buffett time, and we are happy to bring to the stream Mr. Monte Michael Moore. Monte, how are you tonight?
I'm great. Thanks. Sorry for the delay.
Oh, no, it makes our heart stop when we can't reach people in this age of, instant touch communications.
And I'm usually that guy who's like, right there when somebody messages me that you can tell what's going on. And I'm like, oh yeah, I answer questions. So normally I'm pretty available, but I just had it at the wrong date on the calendar.
Isn't that weird how we've like grown accustomed and it's a requirement now that we be instantly available. I remember, in early 2000s, I would drive 20 miles from work to home and I had a pager and, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a flip phone. I'd get like messages on my pager, buzzes, and I'd get home. My wife's like, I was paging you. I'm like, yeah,
I was driving.
What do you want me to do about it?
Yeah. And it's not even just like a small company thing. I have a meeting tomorrow too, and it's regarding the Mandalorian and one of the projects that I'm working on, and it's the same exact thing with the time zone. And it's like, I just want to confirm the meeting is 10 for me, 9 for you. They're in California, and I still have to elaborate that because when they send me an invite, and this might be from a really big company, sure, and the invite will not figure out the time zone part. It doesn't automatically adjust for me.
Oh,
so they really need to get that worked out.
Okay. Yeah. So basically you just spilled the tea that you're doing a big Mandalorian project and we got the exclusive news on that here, right?
Well, so the first 4 prints have been out for not quite a year. So that's not super spillage news. And I had posted 2 days ago that I'm doing my first ever Disney signing actually at Disney Springs in Florida. So they are having me go down to the actual park location called Disney Springs, which I've never been to.
I've never even heard of Disney Springs.
I haven't. I think maybe what they did was there was, and I could be wrong, maybe an existing resort and they bought it and converted it maybe to a Disney property, or maybe Disney Springs is just the resort part, like where you stay, and then you go to the Disney World part. And so that's just where like the hoteling part is.
Oh, that makes sense.
So my prints for The Mandalorian are through Thomas Kincaid Studios. Okay. And hopefully within maybe the next couple months, fans will actually be able to buy directly through me as well. Currently, if they want to get any of those products, they can just go to Thomas Kincaid Studio website and they can type in The Mandalorian or Star Wars and it'll bring up a bio for me and it'll show you the first 4 episodes. And I'm currently doing a fine art painting for every episode, at least for the first season and now moving into season 2. So earlier today, I was working on episode 7.
I just had this mental image flash in my head of you painting these wildflower pastoral settings with lightsaber duels happening in front of them when you said
Well,
it was
kind of, yeah.
it's that kind of it's noticeably
Well, they're
painting with light.
we're trying to find a happy medium between what your maybe your typical Star Wars fan or pop culture fan would want, with still keeping the traditions of Kincaid. Now Kincaid's been dead since
Oh, sure.
2012, and so they work with freelancers like me, and so we do we are shying away from blaster battles and droids with heads popping off and things like that, and trying to go with important epic moments that have the light and have a powerful image and stuff. So the first 4 episodes that are out are the escort for episode 1, Turning Point, actually. So that's with IG-11 on the ground and him reaching out, the kind of moment with the finger where Grogu kind of puts the finger up.
Gotcha.
And then it kind of just rolls on from there, and in a poignant moment in every episode.
Yeah, Kincaid Studios has had this deal with Disney for a while now, I think, because I
They
remember,
have,
my wife had a calendar, and a lot of stuff gets translated to calendars of 12 months of Disney princesses and main characters that were beautifully painted on, and you can recognize a Thomas Kincaid style painting.
Oh yeah,
you don't even have
they're
to
very panoramic and they're very colorful, and there's a formula that works for them, and that's why they're one of the most successful in that category for sure.
Yeah, we're not going to see a Thomas Kincaid H.P. Lovecraft mashup coming anytime soon.
I wouldn't think so.
Not officially. Somewhere now, somebody's just
probably from the fans.
Yeah,
I have seen it where the fans do these digital mashups, and they, without permission, take an image online and then they digitally Photoshop in the Death Star and walkers and things like that, and they are interesting images even if they don't have the rights to actually do that.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like seeing this beautiful, peaceful valley and stream with a Death Star firing up and ready to
basically wipe out the entire forest. Yeah.
So the reason we got you here tonight is because you have an Indiegogo, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. This is a project that's already been published. It's an award-winning graphic novel. So I'm trying to see, was it a series before, and this is the compilation, or?
I'll give you the quick rundown.
Yeah.
So I started this particular project 5-6 years ago. It was 2016. And I'm the writer-creator for it. And so I have an art team to bring it to fruition as a 48-page graphic novel. And when COVID hit in the spring of last year, I was all set to launch a Kickstarter, and then I was going to put the crush on it, like, oh, this is the wrong time to launch. And other podcasters actually were the ones who encouraged me to say, no, everybody's home. They want to support comic creators like yourself. We'll help you get the word out, launch it. So with like 4 days later, we launched Loco Hero #1. And I have done a number of successful Kickstarters that were for art books in the past since 2013. But we launched Loco Hero #1, and we did $50,000.
Wow.
On that campaign, and just blew me out of the water, the response. Then when we were able to fulfill it and fans started reading it, got even more better response. People coming back and saying, I read your book. This is the favorite thing I've read all year, or my favorite story I've read in 5 years, or this is my new favorite character. This carries on the traditions of Sergeant Rock, but brings it into today. And, everybody from military to the fact that there's some social and cultural issues in Loco Hero, which is about a woman who thinks she is a superhero, but she does not actually have any power. She lives in our real world, and she's a homeless veteran who is under the mistaken impression that the real estate developer who wants to level the slums is actually building a supervillain headquarters. And that's what his ulterior motive is. And so she's very capable, but she dresses up in this costume that's from the donations bin at the homeless shelter where she volunteers. And it's very, leftover pieces of jazzercise and rollerblade pads. And, she thinks she looks amazing.
To tell you the truth, I mean, for a homeless person, the way you draw her, she does look amazing. She's very clean and she's very youthful and sexy, which is not what you generally attribute to.
She's got a good complexion, but even in the first 5 pages, like the story opens up, she's sleeping in a cardboard box and she eats out of a garbage can and things like that, because that's what she has to do, because the shelter runs out of food and she gives food to other people first. And she's the kind of person who sacrifices herself before others. And, she learned that in the military. And when she comes to the aid of another person who's attacked and she takes a blow to the head from a pipe, when she wakes up, she has a dissociative disorder, head trauma, and things get jumbled in her head. And so she misinterprets things that she's reading or people are telling her. And that's where she gets the impression that she's a hero and she needs to stop what these bad guys are doing. And it's just a very interesting and compelling story. And then one of the offerings that we have, I think maybe if you scroll down on the page, you could probably see the Honor Bound cover, which was cover of the year in the Independent Creator Awards. And it's a little bit farther down. Okay. Yep. We'll be past this. This is kind of development, shows working on the project. Keep going.
So I got a lot of stuff that looks the same until I get to, okay, here's
right.
There's the art core.
These are the new variant covers. So those are all my art. Okay. And then we have new variant covers from Jamie Tyndall and Paolo Pantalena and a number of other artists. So this cover here, which you're seeing now, we call this the Honor Bound cover. And I also offer a sculpture of this now. So this was the one that was voted as a fan award for the Independent Creator Awards, and we won cover of the year. This cover also is my philanthropy cover. And so half the proceeds that come in from anyone who buys this version of the book is donated to Operation Second Chance, which helps veterans at the Walter Reed Hospital in DC as they're transitioning to civilian life and they're having emotional, mental, and physical challenges.
Okay, so let me just throw this out to the chat here. There are a lot of covers. There's not a lot of covers. I've seen campaigns that have a lot of covers. There are several covers to this campaign for this graphic novel that you're going to want to get. J. Scott Campbell, for instance, being one of them. This is the one you have to get. If you get any pack at all, you at least put this one on as an add-on.
Absolutely. This was our most popular cover when we first released Loco Hero on Kickstarter. And so what I was hearing from some of the fans that were either new fans who have come to me recently on social media, or other fans who maybe said, hey, this came out right at COVID. People were unsure. People weren't working, put the kibosh on buying comics when, people couldn't go to work if they worked in the restaurant industry or whatever. And so I sort of made a pledge to, hey, we're going to offer this again. So the inside is the same. We kept this cover as our fundraising cover because this wasn't a limited cover, right? Why would you want to limit helping other people and raise funds for them? So this is my evergreen cover that can live on in many different ways. And so we kept this one, and then we re-released some of the sketch covers that you saw above that were from me. Those were all covers that I drew for fans who got a sketch cover reward tier that is certainly an upper tier that they would get a blank sketch cover, and then I would draw my own characters for the first time ever on a Loco Hero blank. And then some of them turned out so nice that I decided to release them as printed covers.
Sure. Now, you said this is going to be available as a sculpture.
It is. I already have this. So we've already sold 3 of the bronzes. She sits about 6 inches tall. And then we've sold some of the fine art bronzes. And then I also have another version that I already have here in the studio. and it's actually 3D printed and it's made out of resin. And then what I have to do is I have to come in and I have to sand it, get rid of any of the, kind of printing elements, and then put an actual paint job / coating. So I haven't painted one yet, but my goal is to, for fans who want this image of her, Brina Hernandez is the character, with we'll call it the patriotic scheme, that I would then hand paint and airbrush over the sculpture. So those are available.
I was hoping there was going to be a colored version available, either in like cold cast porcelain and I'm glad to see that there's a 3D printed resin one that's more affordable than bronze.
Yeah, the bronzes are, believe it or not. So I actually didn't do the sculpting on this one. A good friend of mine who's an award-winning sculptor, we were doing a fine art show together, and he was so taken by the image, he said, could I do a sculpture of that? And I said, great, let's do a collaboration. So Jerry Vaughn did the sculpting on this piece, and then to some of his collectors and at the show, he sold 3 bronzes, and they sell for $3,500 each.
Yeah.
For the bronzes. And then what I'm doing is I'm offering the resin ones at $600, and then $900 is painted. And then that, I'll come in and finish those out individually.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Even for resin, that's
yeah, if people go back and they scroll back on my feed, or you do a search for maybe Loco Hero sculpture or something like that, it'll probably bring up pictures that I have posted of the process, because I'm a big process guy. So I'll say, hey, today I'm working on the final sculpture, or, putting finishing touches, and people can go look at those pictures on Facebook or Instagram. I don't have any pictures of the sculpture here because we're not actually offering the sculpture in the Indiegogo campaign.
I was going to ask if it was not something that was like in any add-ons or thereabouts.
We tried to keep this one a little more light and just kind of like focused on the book. There's 8 covers total, 4 from me, 4 from variant cover artists. And, we do have some print options where people can still get their favorite cover as a print. But we're not actually offering commissions and things like that, because we're just coming out of the campaign for Blood and Bullets, which was my second graphic novel project, and it ended on Kickstarter. It did $45,000, and I did take 6 or 7 commissions on that campaign. And so on the Indiegogo campaign, currently we're not offering any hand-drawn commission slots.
Right. So these are the 4 covers then that you were talking about earlier, where you had done sketch covers that you wanted to actually reproduce.
Yep,
as regular covers.
Yep, and the only one I had digitally colored is the called Lead the Way up there in the upper left, and I had Sanju, well-known comics colorist, color that particular piece. And sometimes, as a publisher, you'll hold back certain things, right? So in the next campaign, maybe a color version of one of these other ones, might come out, or it might be on a bookmark or a trading card kind of thing.
Okay, and of course, being fan commissions, we tend to say, can you draw a little like this, which might or might not be indicative of what's in the book. So we're seeing some sexy covers here. Is the book is it more for mature audiences? I mean, I'm guessing it would be simply for the PTSD aspects of it and some of the
I don't make it too gritty. There's a slight bit of language, but I didn't make the book rated R. And actually, the interior book doesn't go for over gratifying cheesecake. It's still sexy and well drawn. But for the most part, she runs around in camo pants and a t-shirt until she changes into this more form-fitting outfit. So I want there to be a balance between the quality and the content of the story and writing, followed by really quality art and storytelling, and not sacrifice it. But I still want to give the fans what I think they want and what I want as a creator, which is a quality product that people enjoy reading. Because as much as I make my living primarily as a cover artist, I would be upset for the people who don't want to read my book and see what it's about, because that's where a lot of the love went into it and the pride of creating something. I can draw sexy girls all day long with the best of them. But to get the fan feedback that I did was really, really gratifying.
Sure.
And so that made me want to sort of go full bore ahead. And actually, in a lot of ways, it changed my direction on what I'm doing with my career, because I have 10 graphic novels right now in process.
Whoa, in process. So not
in process.
Incomplete stations.
Yeah, meaning it's more than, all of those things are more than just already having written them. Now, I've written 11 screenplays. You got a question there on pages. The graphic novel is 48 pages. So my focus is to make most of my Kickstarters all multi-issue arcs. So this particular arc for Loco Hero is 2 issues, and Loco Hero number 2 launches on July 6th. So just about, 10 days or less.
Okay.
And so it is already drawn. It is mostly colored, and the lettering has already begun. So rather than taking people's money and then going out and hiring them and say, hey, guess what? Hopefully this will be done in a year. I'm following more of the route of Brian Polito, who goes out and has the book made, makes it the way you want. You reach into your own pocket to pay your artists and your team and your staff and your marketing and all that. And then you hope that you recoup your investment, which is quite substantial.
And it's that, okay. Not that my readers here are responsible for this, but it's criminal that this is not funded yet with 38 days left. I'm assuming you went 60-day total campaign.
No, it was like 29 or not 29.
We got 38 days left. So
yeah, it started Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay.
So
we're much better about that.
So we're very new to it. And we did what we basically called a very soft launch. Not many people knew we were going to launch this, and we were already promoting Loco Hero number 2. And so Josh, who works with me here in the studio, I was like, hey, let's try an Indiegogo campaign. Might not be epic, might not be, 40, 50,000. But if we can offer the book for those who missed it, and they can just get what they want a la carte, and we're not necessarily swinging for the fences, meaning I haven't offered $4,000 cover originals and, this kind of thing that I might on Kickstarter, that it still allows the backers who missed out or who are new to either, say, your followers, maybe who aren't familiar with the fact that I'm publishing now. It gives them a chance to, get the book, learn the story. And then for those collectors who really maybe like their books graded, or they don't necessarily read the book, you get a digital PDF of the comic as well with your backing pledge of the comic. So then you get the best of both worlds. You can have that CGC graded if you want, or CBS or whoever, or you can just put it in a sleeve, and then you can read the digital copy and give me your feedback if you enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, my name's Bob.
I break the rule all the time. I crack spines. I read books.
That's not a rule in my book. That's just a personal choice for collectors. But there are those who are avid collectors who they will support this, and they will get all 8 covers because they have all 16 from the Kickstarter, and they got to have every one.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see this thing jump $260 before the show is over here. I mean, that
would be amazing.
I don't think that's unreasonable. We have people here who love comics. We showed. Now these are some different sketches here. What are we looking at here?
Those are mine. Most of those are my sketches. So these were the early development sketches. So the one in the upper left, where you can still, she says kind of like a raincoat on, and she, has this kind of jazzercise look, but the costume wasn't sort of quite developed yet. And so then it moved to more of the look on the lower left, which is also mine, that says Loco Hero. That was the first drawing that was more fleshed out on kind of what her costume might look like. And believe it or not, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I gave that drawing away to a reader who answered a fan contest on Facebook. And I sent them that original art as, somebody who was following my artist page. Then the other one was a head sketch just up on the right. And then I had some other artists working on this back in 2016, and they never really got back past about 10 or 15 pages, and a lot of personal issues. And so 2 of those other drawings you see there were from that artist who did great work but just couldn't finish the book.
Sure,
So
things happen.
Yep. And so that page there on the upper right, that was a blue line page. That was one of his early development pages. But then you can see the finished artist, whose name is Donnie Hadawaha. His work is down in the left. And then Sean Callahan, a colored piece there. That's the actual caliber of the art that's inside. That's just fantastic. And so they've now been, they've turned in 100 pages of this story cumulatively. And I hope to continue with that team and hopefully keep everybody together and, keep doing issues and telling new stories, because this is really just her first arc. This is like watching episode 1 of a new series.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the different tiers here. You got a unique approach here. You make us read it, and then that's fine. But usually it's like I'm used to seeing like, here's a picture of the tier. And so I'm actually having to read it. So you can get the digital download for just $10. That's change. But the one I was attracted to is this $15 one here, where you can get the cover. Any one of the 8 covers is what I'm assuming. in
a larger print, and we'll, if people want print signed, we can sign prints. A lot of people don't, or it gives them something to bring to me at a convention if they see me at San Diego or New York. That kind of thing. And then if we have stretch goals that are hit along the way, just like any good campaign, then those would release other items that we'll make available as we hopefully maybe hit some upper levels during the next month.
Yeah, and the reason it appeals to me is because it's like, if you see several covers that you like and you just can't open the wallet enough to get all the books, get the book you really like and get all the covers. Just for framing or hanging or whatever you do with them.
Mm-hmm.
So
a lot of people put them in portfolios.
Oh yeah, I should do that. They don't get bent out that way. These were the 4 sketch covers we saw, and then you have the Rockstar editions here. Now, you've definitely found some rock stars to do these covers for you here.
Well, it's kind of nice when you're an artist and you've been in the industry like I have almost 30 years, and a lot of these people you either know personally and you've met at shows and, you go to dinner together or whatever. And then others, like maybe somebody like Shikari, who's new to my work, who said, wow, I really like your character. Could I do a rendition for you? Absolutely. People like Paolo Pantalena, I would reach out to and say, hey, I'm a big fan of your art, have been for years. And now I'm publishing. So would you be willing to do a cover for a smaller publisher like me? Because I'm untried and tested, but fortunately for me, I have a fair amount of cred in the industry as a fellow artist. So there's only been a few artists who have just been too busy and said, nah, I can't do it. And then there's other artists like, the Jamie Tyndall cover there is one of them, as well as Ryan Kincaid, Marat Michaels, Jesse Wichman. And a lot of times we just, we trade covers with each other. Hey, you do a cover for me, I'll do a cover for you.
Yeah, and so by the way, earlier I mistakenly said J. Scott Campbell. I was thinking of this Jamie Tyndall cover here.
Yep.
There's no JSC. That's JT.
Yeah, he doesn't really do a lot of freelance stuff now because he doesn't need to.
No, of course not. I'm particularly taken with this Shikari cover here, and that's the one I'm heavily leaning toward.
His was the very first one that was done of the kind of newer pieces that were done after the recent campaign. And then there's a couple things of note here. So the Paolo Pantalena cover, so I called that one Nightbringer, and he was generous enough to do 2 different colored versions of that piece. And so there's another version that's going to be over on Kickstarter, and you're the first person to hear about this. It's a little debut. Okay. And that one is called Lightbringer. And it's the same image, but the background and the coloration is all reds and yellows. And so the completist, if they wanted the Paolo Pantalena set, they could get Lightbringer and Nightbringer as a set of matched covers.
And this is when you launch number 2, the second
number 2 on July 6th. And we have a bunch. If you were to go bounce over to Kickstarter and actually you could just put in inked.pub/LOCO Hero 2 and it should take you to the pre-launch page. where people can sign up to get pre-launch notifications, but it won't show you the whole campaign yet.
Gotcha.
But I can tell you some of the artists that we have in that campaign. I've already mentioned we'll have cover from Paolo. There is this cover here that you see that I've teased out is from Richard Ortiz that you see there on the right. And that's called The Stand. And you can see some of the fellow homeless folks that she lives with are taking a stand behind her there to defend their home from the sort of impending bulldozers. And John Royal has done a first ever cover for me. RB White is another one that's being colored right now. We have great coloring from Ula Moss, Sanju, Cici de la Cruz. Trying to think who else has colors out there that are happening. A number of people. And then might even, depending on their schedule, we might get a Mike Chrome and a Mike DeBalfo cover in, just like we did in the last campaign.
So now this is going to be the second part of the story we're seeing on Indiegogo right now, because you said it's a two issue arc, and then there'll be more arcs to follow.
Correct. Yes.
Heroenberg has a question or a statement here, a question, and I'm going to put mine out there first, because since you guys are working in the independent market and it's a lot easier for you to collaborate with other independent people, don't make me drop to my knees and say, please, please, please team up with Badger, with Mike Barron. Because
Mike just lives north of me. He's actually up in Fort Collins.
The two characters just complement each other so well, I would think.
That'd be kind of a fun crossover.
Yeah, because they're both, a little cracked in the head and superhero identities. And and it was, the first thing I thought of when you mentioned that, she's got this dissociative personality disorder and one of them is a superhero. I'm like, oh, Badger. Heroenberg is, I like the idea of the unhinged superheroine. Shades of Typhoid Mary, Rose and Thorn. Yes, Crazy Jane. And she's gorgeous, but I'd like to hear why she is specifically Latina, possibly based on somebody. So yeah, how'd you create your base character, not just the superhero and the reason, but herself?
It's actually quite a unique story, because I think a lot of people just they sit down and they say, I'm going to create a comics character. I'm going to create the next Superman. And mine was not that kind of story. I was already writing screenplays and I love creative writing. But for those who haven't heard the story, which you can read a little bit about if you watch the video on Kickstarter Indiegogo, but I was at San Diego Comic-Con in 2016, which I've been at every year since '93 as an artist. And I was walking in front of the convention center and I was coming back from dinner with some friends. And earlier in the day, I had lunch with a friend of mine who works in indie film. And I had said, what kind, if you were going to do an indie character for a movie, what would you do? And he said, yeah, I'd probably do superhero, not, low budget horror. And I was like, oh man, okay. Low budget superhero is hard to do because they have like powers and they're flying around and special effects out the wazoo. And it's hard to do as an indie. And so I'm walking in front of the convention center. It's like 10 o'clock at night. And coming this way on my left is a set of cosplayers who were there for the costume contest. So fully dressed superheroes. On my right, passing me, pushing her cart in the street, is an older woman, clearly homeless and very mentally challenged or emotionally challenged. And she's having a very large argument with herself. And she's talking and yelling and she's pushing her cart. She's very angry. And I literally, at that moment, I thought, what if my hero, that's my low budget superhero, lives on the street, but thinks and looks like these guys over here and thinks she's a hero, but has no powers. And literally that's how my character was born. And I was like, oh, okay, I know who she is. I don't know her full background yet. So on the way back from the con on the 18-hour drive home to Colorado, I had my buddy driving with me in the car. And I said, hey, I want you to take a drive and we're going to talk out some of these ideas. And I'm going to take notes on this character because I got her in my brain and I need to, get some of these details down. So he's driving along and I'm talking about, well, I want her to be physically capable, right? Because she's not going to have powers. So I said, what if I give her a military background, maybe did martial arts since a young age. So she's very physical capable. Like if she had been a man, she probably would be special ops, like special teams.
Okay.
But instead she's in the military, and to make her also very handy with mechanical, because I want her to be able to fix and make things in the future. You don't see it yet. She grew up, her dad had a mechanics garage and stuff like that. So she worked on cars and she built stuff. So her MOS in the Army was mechanic. And so to get back to your question about why she is Latina, is I didn't specifically set out for her needing to be specifically that, but the idea of LOCO, hero, and LOCO obviously meaning crazy, and
Sure.
the alliteration and the rhyming of it just came to me on that drive as I was taking notes. I had no idea what my title would be. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's called LOCO Hero. And to tie in with the Spanish in the background, I'm going to make her Latina, and she's going to be homeless, and she's going to be military. And my family has military service all the way back to the Revolutionary War and serving directly under George Washington. So I'm a big military supporter and fan. All three of my cousins served in various branches. My grandfather was an admiral in World War II and had his own aircraft carrier. So I grew up in a very patriotic family, military service. So I like giving money to causes that help veterans and things like that, whether it's the DAV or, maybe Wounded Warrior, things like that. So to me, to be able to then bring in part of her story, to have her dealing with PTSD and struggling with some survivor's guilt, because in the first arc, you see some of the backstory of what happened to her squad when she was over there, and maybe why she ended up on the street. And so there's a lot of content. There's a lot of meat to the story. And I see a lot of comics put out by indie publishers who want, to get their story out there, and doesn't seem like maybe there's a lot of meat and a lot of behind it. They just want, cute or sassy characters or whatever. And I want people to read it and go, man, that makes a great story. That would make a great series or movie. So my ultimate goal is to continue to market my stories and use my comics and graphic novels as a springboard to then eventually either land a rep or a marketing deal where my stories and comics are made into feature films and TV series.
Yeah. Now, you said you were at the San Diego Comic-Con when this idea was launched. In your head,
Yes.
was that, you said 2017?
2016.
2016. Okay, so it wasn't 2014, because that was, I guess there was the story that came out of San Diego Comic-Con then about the cosplayer, Millie Makara, I guess, that had been attacked and was found unconscious.
Oh, I never heard that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there every year, but I never heard that story. I was there the year that somebody got in a fight and stabbed somebody with a pencil in Hall H.
I remember Hall H. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I never hardly get to leave the booth. I've never been in Hall H in my life, but I've been to Comic-Con 28 years in a row.
I fully expected that artists were going to have to leave all their tools outside and work with the pencils provided inside by security that were already in the building. Can't carry them in with you.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I mean, since COVID and stuff like that, obviously 2 years sort of off in a row. But now we're getting conventions to come back. My first bigger one will probably be either Denver or New York.
So do you have on your end, I know I'm sharing the Indiegogo page here, but do you have on your end any interior art of the book to share? Because we have people in the chat who are...
Yeah, so just scroll down a little bit lower. Should be here in the content.
They're on the precipice, but they said there's not enough interior art to convince them to buy it yet. So we've seen these pages.
Keep going.
I looked. I looked, and all I get is these particular... And I did think that was kind of strange that it was missing, so much interior art, because there usually is that.
Keep going.
We're repeating the covers.
Yeah, I wonder. So
we are at the end of the...
Oh, I'll have to add that back in. So if you go to go over to Loco Hero #1, where you just previously were, which was on Kickstarter. Yeah. That is we're gonna have to remedy that and add that to our story on our Indiegogo so people
that might help the dollars go up.
Yeah, and obviously I had that for a reason, but I was out of town. I was doing the fulfillment for Blood and Bullets, and I had Josh putting together a lot of this in the studio, and we seem to have neglected to keep that page in there.
We'll pull it up because this is the same book that was over on Kickstarter. This is the Indiegogo version.
Yeah, and it would be covers. The same cover art.
Oh my, we can't find projects in Mattress Search.
Maybe because it's past projects. What if you put in? Will it always bring up past projects?
Let me just take the #1 off of it.
Yeah, I think so.
I've usually had. Oh wait, here we go. Explore one project. Okay.
There you go.
So we're going to use Kickstarter to sell Indiegogo.
Right. Well, because you have found a chink in our armor.
We do what works.
So scroll down and you'll see a lot of, you'll see some of the same imagery.
This is acting like I'm on a 300 baud modem.
Right. Bing, 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 bing. Yeah. I don't miss those days. I
don't either. My wife doesn't miss them either because it was like she could never get on the phone.
So here's some black and whites, and then after this should be some color samples. So that's on the panel on the right, you can see she's trying on her costume for the first time, and she's looking in the donation box, and she's got a set of football pads, and she puts on a motorcycle helmet, and she's like, oh man, this would give me night vision, and because everything is skewed. And then when she holds up the pad, she's like, no, I'm like Batman, I don't need a lot of armor, I need to be able to move freely. And so that was her trying out her outfit. Hey, wait a minute, did we miss it?
I saw that one section there. Thought maybe there might be some other interior pages, but I will go back to that one.
I'm not sure if it'll load it, but I know for a fact that previously, and it should have been, I thought it should have been right after that page right there.
Then we see covers.
The heck. I guess just scroll down real slowly. So that's originals. That's the covers. These were last year's covers.
And then we're into the stretch goals. So we're already past the storytelling.
We're only about halfway through on the left. So maybe I put it down below. I thought the stretch goals were lower. So there's the original drawing. This was cover art that people could buy. So we sold all of those.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Interior sample. So this is, you can see her opening page when she wakes up on the street and she's, sleeping in a box. And then this is part of the action page that is a flashback of her squad getting attacked by a rocket attack and her trying to save her fellow combatants. Then down below is a page where she's trying on outfit stuff for the first time.
And this is how she sees herself.
Exactly. And so that shows you some of the fun stuff. There's a page where there's a splash page in there that's this kind of her fighting ninjas, and she's fighting these street thugs, but in her brain she thinks they're ninjas. So if they're ninjas, then she must be a samurai. And so she's standing there in the samurai, looking outfit, because that's what she sees herself in her brain. And she says, if you are the villains, then I must be the hero come to stand against you. And the guys on the streets like, this bitch must be crazy, because they're, street thugs or whatever. And so you get this really unique play of what's in her brain and what's really happening.
I love that. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of The Tick as well, but not with obviously The Tick was a humor book where everything was a villain to him too.
Right.
Until it was the cartoon series, and then it truly was that. So.
Right. Yeah, I never watched or read it. I was familiar with the character just a little bit. she also watched a lot of movies with her dad growing up. And so I sprinkle a lot of pop culture movie quotes and things like that throughout that might be things that she either thinks of or, says. And so somebody might be like, oh, that's out of Die Hard, or this is out of the Three Musketeers. And so there's a lot of little pop culture Easter eggs because I'm a big movie quote guy. I watch a lot of movies as I work. And so I'm familiar with a lot of the dialogue. And so I want her character to have a little bit of that. And one of the fun parts of the story is there's a young boy that's also in the homeless shelter with his mom, and he's reading a book that I sort of called The Crusader. And the Crusader's kind of a Batman caped crusader kind of hero. And in a couple of scenes, what she's doing is mirroring, and he's reading the book and saying, and the Cape Crusader did this. And then we see Brina going across the rooftops. And then he did this, and he prowled and moved through the night. And so in these little pieces in the book, this young boy almost becomes like a narrator figure, and you get little pieces of the comic book, but we see that she's actually doing these heroic kinds of things. And so I love the tie-in of that.
Yeah, and the fact is that while she's mentally unbalanced and thinks she's a superhero, she does know how to fight. So this is not, I'm going to go out and be a superhero and get shot right away. She's
she kicks butt, but it's also, that she's running around in, spandex and, doesn't have bulletproof vests and things like that. But we will find out a little bit more about her character in the second issue and her background, and saying, why is she quite so capable? It's like, well, she grew up and, her dad made sure she was capable, and she was not a little wallflower. And she decided to go into the military so that her brother could go to school, and both of them couldn't go to school. So she's like, I'm going to go in the military and I'm going to help you go to school. So she sacrifices herself, and her brother becomes a lawyer, and they're, first generation. And you find out about when they came over here in issue 2, you're going to learn more about that.
So we've got all 4 of those in any one of those 4 ArtCore editions. Let me say it correctly so we don't oversell for the price. $20. If you see the ArtCore editions down here, and I'm gonna give you seizures, guys. I'm gonna scroll up and down to find the covers. Any one of these 4, pick one. $20. That's a deal for an Indiegogo book. The same here for the Rockstar books. And you've seen those. You scroll down. The link, by the way, is first line below the video window here. So
and you don't have to make your choices now. Say somebody says, hey, I want to read the book, I want to get it. You'll make your choices at the end of the campaign. So you don't have to say, which one do I get, the Paolo cover, or do I get a so-and-so? If you figure out what your pledge is, or you want to do multiple pledges or add-ons, you certainly can do that. And then when we wrap up the campaign, then we'll say, hey, what would you like to select and pick? And we'll go from there. Yeah.
The one you do have to pick is the honor cover. This is, I'm no bones about this one. This is the one that's going to help our men and women in uniform.
Absolutely. Yep.
So get that honor cover, and then anything else is an add-on. But this one's the priority. $25 for the 48-page graphic novel.
That was by far our biggest, most supported tier on the original Kickstarter campaign, which made me feel great. And we raised over $2,000 for that, and got a check sent to Operation Second Chance.
Excellent. Now there's a holofoil edition here. I'm trying to read through it to see if it's holofoil version of the ArtCore or the Rockstar, or what it's the holofoil of.
They are featuring cover art from Hottest Art. Yeah, so those are the variants. Yep.
Okay, so these are the Rockstar variants. You can get in a holofoil.
And I believe the linens, if people want to get a linen texture cover, those are my covers.
That is one I have not seen done before. A linen textured cover. Is that so? Like what you do on a hardcover?
Yeah, and the paper itself is a pearl. So it's actually a pearl linen. And we just did our first covers like that with Blood and Bullets, which is my vampire Western. And we had a couple that had Native American characters and stuff. and they're really just stunning. They feel like fine art. All of the colors and the details come through just as clearly, but you just get this really soft, subtle linen, and then there's a pearl essence to it as well. So it's not near as flashy as, say, the hollow foil, but man, they look great, and the fans have really been liking those.
I'm not crazy about hollow foil anyway. It shows fingerprints. I would much rather have something like this.
This one does not show fingerprints.
Yeah. Have you ever done prints like that?
Yeah. So on the Kickstarter for Loco Hero #1, we offered the honor bound print as a fine art, black and white only, on linen, and the same kind of paper, and it just turned out stellar.
Cool.
So
you can get the 6-pack. This is where we start bundling things up here. So you get the 6-pack, which is
yeah, one of each from the different tiers. So you'll get a hollow foil and a linen and a rock star. And, it's for the person who's like, hey, I realize it's the same book, but I really love these, different covers. And obviously that's one of the things that is a big driving factor on our, in our industry, or, get this and pick your 4 favorites and, give the other 2 to a friend or a family member as a gift, and maybe get them involved, and maybe they'll enjoy the book. And so you could keep your 4 favorites and re-gift the other 2.
And if you just can't make any decisions at all,
Get
$600, boom, done.
Yeah, we had a tier like this on the Loco Hero campaign that was called the Loco Supreme, and Loco Supreme was 600 as well, 600 or 700, and it was the same kind of thing. You got one version of every cover that was offered, and so it is a bigger bite. But I think we offered 10, and we sold 7 or 8 of the 10 that were offered. So there are fans out there who, are that completist, and they're like, you know what, this is the first ever, Monte Moore written, produced graphic novel, going all in.
Yeah, well, somebody's already claimed one of these, so again,
yeah, that one went the first day when we launched. So
I'm like, I agree with Daphne Lage. Always offer $1 million tier. You only need one person to hit it.
Yeah. In some of my earlier book campaigns, I would offer the cover art, or I would do a collaboration with somebody like Larry Elmore, who's I'm a big fan and friend of, and we would do a collaboration. Usually right at the end of that campaign, somebody'd come in, and it might be $4,000 or $5,000 for the original art, like a big original painting. And the person would be like, yeah, it's you and Larry. You're my 2 favorite artists. I got to have it, because it's the original art. And it would almost always go.
Well, we jumped up to 2270.
There you go. So every bit helps. I'm grateful for every single backer and every one. I know that there's fans out there. How come my campaign's not going like so and so? You know what? If I get a new pledge from someone and they haven't backed before, and I can turn them into a fan of my writing, creativity, publishing efforts, then it's up to me to keep them as a fan. And so I get kind of giddy about every one of those, new ones. And it doesn't matter if it's $10 or $20 or 200. I love every one of them, because now it's up to me, so that when they get that product and they go, you know what, Monte delivered more.
Make them come back for number 2. This
Right.
This is what we call on the show here. Our viewers are used to this. This is what we call our shake and bake moment.
There you go.
Because it's
shake and bake, and I help.
There you go.
Because they helped get you closer to goal.
Yep, absolutely.
So $230 now would be nice to see. But thank you, whoever did it. Thank you. I'm going to, I'm getting in on this one. There's I have to just, I don't ever get them on stream, because doxing and credit cards and all that stuff gets involved.
Yep, and that's fine.
Probably not best practice.
I think that it's a quality project. It has a lot of heart behind it. It has, well thought out. It has good art. So I was very happy with how the first one went. I'm happy with how this new campaign is going. Can it always be better? Sure. But my whole career I've never had overnight success. I've been in the industry since '93, and I've worked for the absolute smallest single publisher who's never done anything before to the biggest companies there are. I'm working on The Mandalorian. I'm working on Star Wars, but I'm also still doing Lady Death covers and covers for other indie books. So for me, the long, slow journey has worked well. And that's how you build a loyal fan base of friends. And I've met some of the best people in the comics industry who are some of my absolute, best friends. And so the long and slow steady is what wins the race.
Yes.
And I'd rather be the guy who has that kind of campaign and career rather than a flash in the pan. And I've seen some artists that, have just been the biggest flash ever and burned so bright they were the cat's meow for 2 years. And then 2 years later, they're gone. They're just not even in the industry. They either don't know how to handle it or, it's not their focus, or they were just here for a money grab and then they left. And for me, I'm a giant nerd. This is what I live and breathe every day, 70 hours a week.
You get to draw your heroes, create new heroes, and get paid for it.
Yeah.
So,
you're talking to a guy who, has custom painted his motorcycle with a Star Wars, paint scheme. So to now be working on, The Mandalorian and some of these other projects, it's a giant nerd dream come true to, have worked on Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and so many other games, Magic the Gathering. I've worked on all of them.
you've done the cards, some of the WotC cards for them.
I did back in the early 2000s, and I started playing D&D in 81, and I still have character sheets that literally have the date on it, May 18th, 1981. And I have a shelf right over there that's full of all first edition beat up, held together with, packaging tape and electrical tape because the spine's so wore out because we played so much. And so, I grew up doing all this. I didn't come to it later. Like some people would be like, oh, well, there's a bunch of money to be made there. I better learn about this and get in on that. And I've seen it in custom motorcycles, with the big chopper boom. I've seen it with comics where somebody might be doing art for Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. And then you talk to them and you go, oh man, who's your favorite character? Are you a super fan? And they're like, man, I don't even know who Gandalf is. Like, they hired me to do art, and you're just like, man, you're not a true believer.
How can you draw characters that you don't even know? That's no. I mean, when I was doing when I was buying comics in the 90s, early 90s, at my local comic shop, I don't know who it was. I wanted to meet them and shake their hand, but again, 91, so a black Camaro was not, an unusual sight. But this black Camaro that pulled up in front of the comic shop, which had the entire hood painted with an airbrushed Brian Pulido Lady Death.
Nice.
Yeah. I was like,
I heard about that car.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I don't know whose it was, but
I don't know either. But yeah, I like working with people who are passionate about it. Brian is one of those people who's passionate about it. He's stayed in the industry through the ups and the downs. So to see him get his much deserved success right now is amazing. And I think in a lot of ways, people like me look up to him as a mentor and how to do things right. And you got to be able to take care of the fans first.
Yeah.
And, go from there.
So were you making comics in the 80s when you were playing D&D?
I was more of a gamer nerd than I was a comics nerd. And I grew up on a cattle ranch in Idaho in the summers, and we would occasionally be able to get comics from the local grocery store, which is where you had to buy them back then.
Yep.
And honestly, my mom was more comfortable with us having Archie and Richie Rich and Casper and things like that. So I would, when we were a little bit older and we were in junior high and high school, we would trade comics among my friends. We'd bring them to school, or we would go to their house, and I got to read Avengers and Thor, and nothing was ever in a run. It was just, random, bought from a junk store.
And it didn't matter.
Second,
you enjoy the book.
No, didn't matter. And you're like, oh, Hulk Adventures. You're like, have I read that? Oh, I've read that twice. And you would read anything and everything. But twice a month, we would get together at Friends, stay the whole weekend, and we would game, And we would play, games on the Commodore 64, and we would play every role-playing game known to man. So we played Car Wars and Villains and Vigilantes and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Spy versus Spy, Top Secret, you name it. We pretty much had every game there was. And so I was sort of a mix of that. And then I got out of comics, and then I came back into comics I was just coming out of college, and I went to the comic book store to look at all the great art from Olivia and Joe Jesco. And I would buy copies of Heavy Metal. And I was just, I was really into the art, and I didn't have the lofty goal of being a comic book artist. And the manager of the shop said, "Hey, you're the airbrush guy, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, I want you to meet these two guys who are putting together their own comic book, and they're looking for somebody to paint the cover. So I went and met with them, and they hired me to paint the cover, but then we became good friends. And so I said, well, rather than just being a hired guy, what if I was to airbrush and recolor the entire comic, which was called Lords. It was supposed to be called Lords of Light, but we had to change the title because of a Roger Zelazny book. So we went to Comic-Con with that book, and I got my intro into the industry as a colorist, and I hand airbrush an entire comic.
That's amazing. So that was called Lords, which would be your first comic.
Lords number one.
Okay.
And I have mint copies because I have an entire case sitting in my basement.
It's funny that Roger Zelazny was the reason I had to change it from Lords of Light to Lords, because I'm thinking, what was Warner Brothers that solicitatious over Thundar?
Some doofus out there had bought the name, and when we solicited as Lords of Light, they sent us a letter saying we own the title to this book called The Lord of the Light, some book that was written in the 60s, and he was trying to protect his rights, so we had to change the name. Then our book was solicited as black and white instead of color, and it had to come out under a different title. And then we were going to be called Legend Comics. Then Dark Horse came out with their Legend imprint, so we had to change our name again. And we sold maybe 1,000 copies of the 3,000 printed, and we said, this sucks. We're going to make comics where other people pay us to do comic stuff. And of the 4 who involved with that project, I'm the only one that makes a living as a comic book artist and now writer publisher. But
just imagine what you guys could have done if crowdfunding had been a thing.
Yeah, well, you would have gone right to it. And I remember when crowdfunding first came around, and we did a couple of crowdfunding campaigns for some games, because I used to also own a small gaming company. And I was like, well, I don't need to go to Kickstarter. We should be able to scrape together enough money to print this ourselves. So my attitude towards looking at it as, well, that's for people whose projects aren't good enough to just go and sell on the, to the game stores or whatever. And it was it was the wrong attitude and the wrong way to look at it, as opposed to saying, well, let's get the feedback from the fans, and then if they like what you're doing, they can pre-order. And so the way I look at it now is it's more of a, pre-order. If you want to go make a studio album, raise the 20 grand for the studio album, get the $20 from your fans, and then give them the album when they're done. That's how it works.
Yeah. And well, that's how it originally worked, apparently, but it's become pretty much an online store for everybody who's guaranteed to get funded with some. I think the first one I saw that made people say, "Hey, you're not independent, you're using our platform," was Rob Thomas when he kickstarted the Veronica Mars movie and set all kinds of records for everybody who wanted to see that.
I'm very torn on that, because I want sort of indie things to stay independent. I'm sure every indie person thinks that way, but it bothers me a little bit, and I don't know why, when I see Marvel and DC and these other companies put out $1 million products, when you really want to go, we know you guys have the money to just go hire everybody, and they're using it more just like a store, and the rest of us are trying to scrape together and go, is this going to cover my costs? So there's part of me that gets bummed out when we have to then share our space, because for 20-30 years guys like us get pushed to the side by the big 2. And even though I've done a little bit of license work on cards and stuff, I've never done covers for them. But when you have your own space where fans can come and support you, then it's, you feel like you're here talking about this. And then somebody goes, did you hear Marvel's in the room? Quick, go over there. And you're like, oh man, you just sucked all the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So with Loco Hero, just to bring it back to the topic, why we're here.
Right.
Is this an open-ended story you have in mind, or do you have like this ends when this happens?
It's open-ended. So when I originally, it's funny because when I wrote the first script, an actual screenplay, it's a 60-page screenplay that was what was condensed into the first graphic novel, the 48 pages. And I was overseas a week in Scotland, and so most of it was written in the Marriott bar. I'd go down to the bar and I'd, do research, and I had already written full-length screenplays. And so I wrote the first 60 pages and the first episode, essentially the opening episode. And that episode, I broke down, I decided to do it as a series instead of just a feature film, right? Which would have been like 2 hours.
Sure.
And so I chopped it up to where this first 100 pages would have been like a first season, essentially. So it's like a first season arc that's condensed into the two. So, but it was written in a way that, hey, now we know the world that she lives in, and we've been introduced to some of the characters. And I don't know, I haven't fully planned on what's coming after issue 2, but I've planted after issue 2, but I've planted the seeds for it. In other words, I already know kind of the chain of maybe the next villain and how it ties in with her family history and possibly her father and her brother and things like that. But it's a more of a vague sort of outline rather than the nuts and bolts of it.
Okay. And I don't think we touched on this earlier or throughout this, but this is a very real world setting. She thinks she's a superhero because of comic books, not because there are other superheroes.
No, there's no superheroes.
Okay.
And so the world that is in her brain is because of comics and movies, just kind of like we are.
Yeah.
And I know that there's people out there. I've watched documentaries of people who have tried to do the whole kick-ass thing, and literally go out there and fight crime. I watched an hour documentary on a guy who, tries to break up fights and, that sort of thing. So he's acting like a superhero, but he has a regular, like day job.
Yeah, there's if anybody wants to Google that up, it's the RLSH, the real life superhero movement. And
right.
Yeah, there's people in every city that have pages set up and got some cool costumes, but they kind of like, they focus on homeless outreach or environmental issues. And they do it with a superhero persona. I'm still thinking there's probably somebody out there who's doing the whole Tony Stark, Bruce Wayne thing, and they're just too good to be known.
That would be awesome.
I would be so happy.
And this, I like the fact that, my character's she's not motivated anything, though what she's doing isn't for monetary gain, personal fame. She's not in the limelight. She's the opposite. It's like, what do you get if you take Bruce Wayne and you take away all his gadgets and you take away all his money and all his suits and the butler and the house and all that, and you say, here's somebody who wants to do good, and they're going out on this, on the streets, but not because of like vengeance in mind. It's not like I am the avenging angel. It's a lot of it's because it's in her head, so it's kind of pure. Right, the motivations and things, she's putting herself in harm's way, and it's not for herself in any way. And so I think that the reader feedback that I've gotten has been, hey, this is a breath of fresh air, because it's not just a TNA book that's, a whole bunch of, butt shots, and it's, sexy superheroes on, $50,000 motorcycles and hover jets. You're like, yeah, it's the opposite of that. She eats out of a garbage can and she has no home.
You have a real story to tell here, and an important story, I would go as far as to say. So
well, and the thing is the story all came about very naturally and very organic. So rather than saying, hey, here's these 3 big causes, I'm going to go write a comic because I need to have LGBT characters, or I need to have this social agenda. I didn't have any of that. I started with a character, and then I built her backstory, and then she turned into somebody, and this is the world she lives in. And it became very organic, as opposed to me saying, here's my social agenda. And it all just came together so naturally. I was like, oh my God, this is a gem, and I have to give this life because this feels so good.
We're all kind of tired of the social agenda comics these days. And that's not a conversation I want to drag you into. I mean,
no, but the thing is there's some things in this story that I think people will enjoy, but there's nothing that beats anybody over the head, because my story is not driven by any kind of social agenda. It's just in there as part of ingredients because it's natural for her.
Because that happens in real life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just this person's story. And so it's a story driven, it's like when people say, well, is your piece action driven? Is it story driven? Is it character driven? Well, this is a very character and story driven kind of story. And it's paired with good storytelling and some nice art, and there's no reason why, even if you live on the street, that it's not going to change your bone structure. If she's beautiful, she's beautiful. Sure. We don't really get to see her in how would she look if she was dolled up in a J. Scott Campbell, evening dress, other than in her head. And now you get a chance to show her in these kind of like crazy, amazing costumes, because she doesn't need to buy them. They're just how she envisions herself. So in a lot of ways, it's just kind of fun, smart storytelling. All
right. Well, Monte, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and talking with us about Loco Hero. I think this is a great book. I think it just needs to be seen by more people on Indiegogo, because you did well on Kickstarter. And
it's a soft start. I haven't done a lot of marketing, and a lot of my fans who follow me on social media, on Facebook, they already have some of their copies of Loco Hero. Yeah. So I'm looking for that new backer, the backer that missed out on it, or somebody who's a new fan, that this might be a good project for them. So any pledge and any support always helps. And even if somebody, it's maybe not their cup of tea, but somebody who it is, we always appreciate any sort of shout out on Twitter, Instagram, social media. I'm Mavarts on Instagram, Mavarts Monte on Twitter. Maverick Arts is named my website, mavarts.com. And you can also follow me on Facebook. And Loco Hero has its own Facebook page, which has about 7,000 followers. So please check that out as well. And, like I said, even if you're not going to support it, maybe just give us a shout out if you enjoyed the show or the project.
Well, speaking of shout outs and reaching new audiences, I would be remiss if I did not point out before we leaving here that Wise Guys Entertainment has been in the chat tonight. And they run an excellent interview show.
Thank you.
Wanted to reach out to you, didn't know how to. I said, I'll get you in touch on the show.
Absolutely. Yes.
So how can people reach you if they want to get you on programs to like this one to put you out there?
They can just message me through Facebook. Monte Michael Moore is my profile page, or any one of I have an artist page. Loco Hero has a page. Blood and Bullets has a page. Or you can just send me an email, montemmore@gmail.com.
Excellent. All right. Monte, thank you again for showing up here tonight and letting us walk through the world of Loco Hero. Everyone in the chat, appreciate you all being here tonight as well. Please do follow the link and back the book, back the honor cover above all. And you'll have my personal gratitude for that. Of course, we're supposed to share the video, and I always say I don't need the numbers, but share it so that the artists and creators that we have on here can be put in front of more eyeballs and spread their projects around. And as always,